2024, an anonymous witness received a mission in the forest. Transform years of extraterrestrial contact into stories for humanity, hidden in plain sight. Before we begin, write in the comments where you're watching from and what you believe about extraterrestrial contact. In mid-2024, deep in a stretch of forest far from lights and roads, an anonymous observer sat alone, expecting only quiet. Years of practice had taught him that silence itself was a teacher, and that the unknown often arrived not in crowds, but in stillness. As dusk bled into night, the usual preludes appeared. Insects hushed as though a dial had been turned. A low hum pressed into his ribs. Warmth swept across his arms despite the cool air, and a metallic tang touched his tongue. Out of the dimness came presence. Not dramatic, not violent, but unmistakable. Forms that had visited before, sometimes at a distance, sometimes in dream, sometimes in the strange overlap between waking and something else. They were not strangers. They had appeared across years, through subtle contact, brief words, and codes that bypassed speech. In this moment, they arrived not to dazzle, but to deliver instruction. The instruction was simple and enormous. Gather everything you've been given. Every notebook, every margin scribbled with symbols, every log of a hush or a hum, every description of contact, physical, verbal, mental. Gather it and bring it to humanity, but do it anonymously. Protect yourself, protect the work, protect the message. The witness understood immediately why anonymity mattered. The world was hungry for spectacle, quick to attack what it did not understand, eager to turn living knowledge into content and content into controversy. Physical threats, mental strain, and emotional backlash had followed others who tried to speak openly. The presences were not demanding secrecy for its own sake. They were prescribing camouflage for survival. As the message settled, the observer felt a curious mix of relief and burden. Relief, because there was finally clarity about how to proceed. Burden, because the mission required not only gathering but transforming. Turning raw notes into stories, reality into narrative, fact into parable. It was not enough to transmit information. It had to be told in a way that invited rather than provoked, protected rather than exposed. The forest night returned to its own sounds. Insects resumed their chorus, the metallic tang faded, the warmth lifted. The observer remained seated, breathing slowly. Notebook open but hands still. He knew this was no ordinary night of logging phenomena. This was a threshold. The following weeks were a blur of paper and memory. The observer combed through boxes of notebooks, stacks of loose pages, digital files backed up under cryptic names. There were logs of nights under stars, dreams sketched in haste before dawn, coded impressions of presences correcting posture or breath. Some entries described subtle words whispered in quiet air. Others recorded symbols pulsing behind closed eyes. Taken together, they formed a map of years of contact. Not a single revelation, but a curriculum written across time. The mission was clear: translate this private archive into stories for humanity. But anonymity was not just a safety measure. It was a style. The presences had asked for the material to be delivered in a way that protects you, which meant blending reality and imagination, hiding facts in fiction, cloaking data in narrative. The observer began to design a channel that would feel like entertainment but carry truth inside it. Like a seed wrapped in fruit, he wrote late into the night, testing ways of telling. A story might begin with a hush in the insects and end with a lesson about patience. Another might weave a dream of a luminous hall into a parable about breathing under pressure. Each piece carried 30 to 40% direct experience and the rest as narrative skin, not to deceive but to protect. The result would be something readers could enjoy as a story and absorb as a signal. Dreams during this period reflected the task. The observer described being shown rooms filled with scrolls, presences guiding him to sort them by rhythm rather than topic, teaching him to embed facts and metaphors to protect sensitive details by blending them with archetype. He woke exhausted but clear. Auditors within his small trusted circle helped anonymize the material further. Names, dates, and places were replaced or removed. Codes were translated into neutral descriptions. The goal was not to erase reality but to shield it. Anonymity was the armor that allowed transmission. And you? Have you ever had to share something true in a way that hid your identity, through art, story, or silence? Comment below. Your experience might resonate with others facing the same challenge. By the end of 2024, the hidden channel was ready. Stories appeared online with no face, no name, no claim to authority, just narratives of contact, patience, and transformation. To outsiders, they looked like fiction. To those attuned, they felt like training. Transforming raw contact into narrative required more than editing. It required a new identity. The observer learned to write in the third person, to shift timelines, to mix characters so no one could trace an event to a location or a person. He invented composite figures, merged multiple nights into one scene, and scattered details so that nothing could be mapped back to the field. Yet the core of each story remained intact. The hush, the hum, the warmth, the tang, the brightening point, the lesson in steadiness. This camouflage was not deception. It was an act of protection, of himself, of the presences, of the readers. The presences had made it clear. The world was not yet ready to receive raw transmissions without distortion, but it could receive stories. Stories were porous. They slipped past defenses. They engaged imagination instead of argument. They invited participation instead of spectatorship. Dreams guided the process. Night after night, the observer found himself in luminous halls, presences, showing him how to plant facts like seeds inside narrative soil. They taught him to pace revelations, to give readers room to breathe, to use metaphor as a bridge between worlds. He woke with outlines that felt dictated rather than invented. Auditing continued. Trusted readers compared drafts to raw notes, checking that the essence remained even when the surface changed. They ensured anonymity held, no names, no locations, no organizations. They verified that each story contained enough reality to train, but enough fiction to protect. Quick pause. Do you think truth wrapped in story can reach deeper than truth? Shouted from a podium? Leave your thoughts in the comments. Your reflection may inspire someone to speak safely. By early 2025, the hidden channel had grown. Each story carried 30 to 40% lived experience, the rest narrative skin. Readers began to sense that something beneath the surface was guiding them. Not a claim, not a doctrine, but a pattern. The presence's mission was being fulfilled quietly, anonymously, story by story. By 2025, the anonymous storyteller had settled into a rhythm. Each week, another piece went out. Sometimes a parable about waiting under stars, sometimes a tale of a dream-correcting posture, sometimes an allegory about breath and patience. Outsiders saw fiction, insiders sensed training. Phenomena continued as always. Hush, hum, warmth, tang, brightening point, geometry, collapse, dim. Dreams rehearsed posture and breath. The channel did not announce these events, it translated them. Contact became curriculum. Curriculum became narrative. Narrative became camouflage. The storyteller's life transformed as well. Fear of exposure softened. Anxiety over misunderstanding diminished. He found steadiness not only under the stars, but at the keyboard. The act of writing became part of the practice. Each story was a breath held steady, a lesson encoded, a bridge built. Readers began to notice changes in themselves. Comments on the channel spoke of unexpected calm, of patience in daily stress, of dreams echoing the narratives. Without claiming authority, the stories were training nervous systems the way the presences had trained the storyteller. The mission had succeeded not by broadcasting, but by seeding. Auditors continued to protect the ethic. They ensured no story drifted into confession or spectacle. No detail betrayed a person or a place. Anonymity remained the shield. The channel remained faceless, nameless, yet consistent. Over time, this consistency built trust. Final reflection. What do you think matters more? The identity of the messenger or the transformation of the listener? Share your answer in the comments. Your perspective matters. By the mid-2020s, the anonymous storyteller understood that he was no longer simply transmitting his experiences. He was building a living method, a way for others to practice steadiness, patience, and curiosity without needing proof. The presences had asked for a channel that would protect both him and the message. In fulfilling that mission, he had discovered a truth. Anonymity was not absence. It was a form of presence, quiet, steady, and free from the distortions of spotlight. The story of 2024 and beyond was not about disclosure. It was about translation. Not about revelation, but about readiness. Not about heroes, but about habits. In turning contact into story, the anonymous observer had done more than protect himself. He had given humanity a mirror of its own potential, to breathe under pressure, to listen before speaking, to carry truth gently enough for it to survive the journey. If this story caught your attention, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with those who are also fascinated by UFOs. And leave your thoughts in the comments. What do you think really happened?